I'm pleased to introduce next Genet Lakew from the National Urban League, digital content director, leading a number of campaigns, very interesting campaigns for honestly one of my favorite nonprofits. So welcome, Genet. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. All right, so I am, as you can see in the picture, I'm wearing a Howard University hoodie. So I'm a proud graduate of Howard University, where I majored in print and online journalism and minored in African studies. And then after that, I went on to get a master's at NYU. I always call it a passion degree. So I did my master's in Africana studies. And the reason I did that is because I loved my minor so much at Howard, and I really wanted to dive deep into global Black diaspora studies. And so once I finished the 2-year program, as I was job hunting, I wanted a career that could sort of blend those two backgrounds, right? Like a background in journalism and storytelling, as well as this deep knowledge of like Black diaspora history that I had learned through the NYU program. And so the National Urban League gave me space to do that. So you see here, I wanted to say a little bit about the Dream Team. And I was really excited because in the opening, I saw that you guys are also building your own Dream Teams. So the Dream Team is what we call ourselves on my marketing and communications department. This is the team. We build campaigns together, we produce events, we win awards, and we really support each other in the work that we do day in and day out. And so a lot of these women that you see here, they're my mentors. And over the years, they've really advocated for me and championed my growth in the organization. So I've been with the League for 8 years now. And when I started in 2014, that was 8 years ago, I started as a temp. So my role was actually supposed to be like a 6-month contract position. So the organization at the time, obviously 2014, social media was a thing, it was big, but my organization was making a concerted effort to establish a social media team and really like sort of, fund a social media team versus having somebody who works in marketing sort of tack it onto their job. And so they brought me on to sort of see how that might go. And so what started as a 6-month position, blossomed into what it is now. And so just wanted to share a little note about how important it is in your future careers to really have people you work with who can advocate for you, who can see the work that you're doing, and help you get promotions and really grow within your organizations. So a little bit about the National Urban League. We were founded in 1910. So this Thursday actually is our birthday. We're turning 112 years old. So we're an established organization. Our main goal is to elevate the standard of living for African Americans and other marginalized groups in the US. So the real work, the National Urban League is our headquarters, right? We're based in New York City. We do have a policy office in Washington, D.C., but the real work happens on the ground. So we have over 92 local affiliates all over the country. So these are the local chapters that have the programs that provide direct services. So some of those programs could be, placing people in jobs, giving students an opportunity to engage in educational programs. And so the affiliates, those local chapters are really the cornerstone of our communities. And for the National Urban League, we do have 5 key focus areas: education, jobs, housing, health, and justice. Everything that we do touches on one of those areas in some shape or form. So I wanted to start with some of our current social media campaigns. So I'm so glad that Mike went before me. He's talking about the great work that they're doing over at Microsoft. Now for the National Urban League, we are a nonprofit organization, right? So with our social media, we're not necessarily selling a particular product. The way that we use social media is as a tool to inform people, right? We want to be a source for reliable, factual information about a range of issues that I just mentioned. On justice topics of equity, But we also want, so we want to educate and inform people, but we also want to let people know that there are programs, opportunities, services that they could take advantage of to enhance their lives, right? So we want to make sure that those programs are reaching them where they are, reaching them on their cell phones, their tablets, their computers, wherever they're sort of using social media. And I would say that our final goal with the social media is to really give people an opportunity to get engaged. So, you know, with our advocacy, we do a great job of making sure people are aware of the issues that exist in our community, but we also empower people to say, yes, these issues are very real, and you know, they can feel daunting at times, but also each of us in this community as citizens that can vote and people that can sort of distribute resources amongst ourselves, we really seek to empower people to be change agents. So some of the campaigns we have right now, Reclaim Your Vote. This is our Get Out the Vote campaign. We have the midterms coming up in 6 weeks. It's right around the corner. And so Reclaim Your Vote, that's a campaign we started in 2020 during the pandemic. So that was a presidential election, which obviously presidential elections get, you know, more visibility and traction than others do. So we kicked it off then. And then in 2021, we brought the campaign back. Even though it wasn't a big election year, we still wanted to keep voting top of mind for people, help them get ready for 2022, which is where we are now with the upcoming midterm elections. And so where we are with the campaign, we understand that midterm elections, you know, people aren't as plugged into them as presidential elections, but our messaging is really that every single election matters, right? Whether you're voting for a president or you're voting for a local office, like actually the local offices is where you see the most immediate day-to-day impact, because those are the policies that are made in the city, in the town, in the county that you live in. So that's a major one for us. COVID safety. We produce materials around vaccine education and resources, and outside of vaccines, masking, and all of the different ways that people can continue to stay safe. You know, I think we've made such great progress from where we were 2 years ago, but there are still vulnerable members of our community who have to be mindful of keeping safe from COVID. And then most immediately, we have Hispanic Heritage Month, which kicked off on September 15th, and it goes all the way to October 15th. So for us, as we are primarily a Black organization, but we do serve Latinx communities and other marginalized communities. And so our goal with this is really to show some of those connections that exist between communities of color and how we can strengthen our sort of communal goal. We have a very communal goal, right? Which is like to have access to the same opportunities and freedoms that every American should be able to enjoy. So to share a little bit about how some of the things that we consider in our previous campaign. So these are just snapshots of, you know, some of the big topics that we've tackled in the past. Whenever our team is, you know, creating a campaign from scratch, the big question we ask ourselves is, what is the most pressing issue, problem, or opportunity that our community is facing right now? And so obviously in 2020, we had the massive protests after George Floyd was murdered, and you know, people really had like a yearning and a desire to see systemic change. They wanted to see a shift in policies of policies that address police accountability. And so that's obviously that's an easy one, right? Like that's something that our community is constantly talking about. We also, you know, most recently, we made history on the Supreme Court. Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson was confirmed as the first Black woman on the Supreme Court. A few years ago, we had Brett Kavanaugh, who was nominated, and we opposed his nomination because a lot of his previous rulings and values were not aligned with what would serve our communities. And so, you know, we build these campaigns to encourage people to write letters to their senators, to go out and vote for the people that they sort of want to see in power. And so we look at what is the pressing question, right? And then once we've identified that, we come up with like, what are the solutions? What are the avenues to address that problem? And we develop clear, concise messaging around it. And then we develop materials that people can use to share and keep themselves informed, but also make sure they're sharing with their own online networks, and also helps us grow our audience, help us reach new people that we might not have. So that's just a gist of like some of the things we consider. But I think some of the strategies that we use to engage and grow our audience is hosting online conversations, which right now outside is open. So a lot of organizations, including us, are going back to in-person events. We actually just had our first in-person conference in July for the first time in 3 years. And so, but during the pandemic, we really took an opportunity to host Instagram live conversations, Twitter chats, Facebook lives, understanding that the audience on each of those platforms differs, right? Like Instagram tends to skew younger, Facebook tends to skew older, and so we do tailor the topics and conversations. But one of the things that we found that was really successful, especially early on in the pandemic, that March 2020, April 2020, May 2020 was a really scary time. People weren't necessarily sure all that was going on. So our president and CEO, Mark Morial, we had him get on Facebook Live twice a week. We ended up bringing it down to once a week, as we went on. But for those first couple of months, we noticed that our audience was really responsive to that. They felt comforted to know that there's this trusted national civil rights leader, showing up on their phone twice a week just to 10-15 minutes, like give them the latest updates, give them the latest numbers. So sort of like inform them of where we are, but also let them know that the Urban League and their local chapter and their local community has resources that they can tap into. And so, hosting those digital conversations is a really great way for us to not only communicate with our current audience, but also grow our audience. And the last thing I'll say is that for most of our campaigns, we create social media toolkits. So to make it easier for people, you don't want to create work for people. You ask people, hey, can you share this? Can you publicize this? But if you just give them everything that they need up front, you give them the graphics, you give them sample social media copy, text that they can sort of tailor to fit their own voice. We found that to be really helpful in mobilizing around our campaigns. So that I hope that some of this information is useful for you all as college students who are making your way through campus and being active members of your community, and seeing okay, what are sort of the needs and the challenges on my campus, and what can I do personally or as a group, as a community, to sort of address those things. So if you have any questions, glad to answer them, but thank you so much for your time.